more than 12% of the US population slash Canada will develop a thyroid condition in their lifetime, and 20 million of us have some sort of thyroid disease right now, which is such a massive amount of people. And even crazier than that, of those 20 million, 60% have literally no idea. Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Welcome back to the Wellness Effect. I am Kira. I'm joined by Lacey and Jensen as always. And today we are talking about the thyroid. And I think this is going to be such a great episode where a lot of you have like an aha moment because thyroid stuff is really everywhere. It's so common. So many of the women we work with have been told that their thyroid is like, they have hypothyroid or hyperthyroid and they've just been put on a medication and like, that's it. Da, da, da. Or they have had some testing done and told that their thyroid is fine, even though they really don't feel that way. So, what I'm going to do today is just explain what this gland really does, how the whole system works, because it's not just your thyroid, it is a system. And then we'll talk about the different markers on the thyroid panel, what they really mean, and what tends to actually drive thyroid struggles in the first place. So, this might be an episode that gets a little bit sciencey, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple as I can because I don't know, that shit's just boring. And I don't want you guys to need to like understand all of that just to understand your body.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think in one area, this is definitely where I have a lot to learn. So
Okay,
excited.
well, sit back and relax. Okay, so first we're gonna go into like what even is this thing? Because there's like a lot of talk about the thyroid, and then it's like, what the heck is it? So your thyroid, it's this little butterfly-shaped gland, and it sits right at the front of your neck. It's just below, like, your Adam's apple area. It weighs less than an ounce, and it is running a lot of different systems in the body. And actually, this is wild, more than 12% of the US population slash Canada will develop a thyroid condition in their lifetime, and 20 million of us have some sort of thyroid disease right now, which is such a massive amount of people. And even crazier than that, of those 20 million, 60% have literally no idea.
That's crazy. Wow.
60% undiagnosed. They're just walking around. They're like, oh, I'm exhausted because I'm, working a lot or I'm a mom or whatever. And their labs are all normal and they have no idea that their thyroid could actually be at the center of it. And on top of that, women are between 5 and 8 times more likely than men to have thyroid problems, which is no surprise, but it's always like shocking to hear 5 times more likely. Like that's a huge amount of people. And 1 in 8 of us will develop a thyroid disorder in their life. So that's some pretty depressing stats for you about the thyroid.
That's one in eight,
Perfect.
1 in 8 women or 1 in 8 people.
1 in 8 women.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we got 1 in 8
Crazy.
women with thyroid issues and 1 out of 2 with osteoporosis.
And
Cool.
80% of autoimmune
Okay, good.
are women.
Great. Just so we're clear.
Just so we're clear on that, everyone.
Okay, so and the thing about the thyroid, it's kind of known as like the metabolism gland. Like we talk about it a lot, in that metabolism lens, but it also influences so much more. Like Jensen just mentioned, osteoporosis. It helps with bone health, body temperature, how you digest food, how your liver detoxifies, cholesterol levels, how you metabolize fat, your heart rate, your mood, your skin, your hair. It literally has a hand in so many different things. And then not even to mention like the emotional component. And there's like a lot of different modalities that work on like speaking your truth and speaking your voice. And if your throat chakra is like blocked or you're not free to do those things, it's going to impact your thyroid, or even having distress in your thyroid is going to impact that ability for you, which might shift how you ask for help if you're having problems with your thyroid. So it's just kind of this like crazy loop. So when we say that, I think it's really common for people to hear or understand. It's like, "Oh, you're tired or you're cold or you struggle to lose weight, you have brain fog." These are all known to kind of revolve around the thyroid, and it's so many different aspects. Like, the thyroid has its toe dipped in so many different little systems and pieces of the body. So if everything is just like a little bit off, that could really point to some thyroid issues. This episode of The Wellness Effect is brought to you by Lifestyle You. If you're listening to this podcast and thinking, okay, this sounds like me, whether it's low energy, hormone imbalances, stubborn symptoms, or you just feel like you've tried everything, Lifestyle You is our root cause coaching program designed to help you actually connect the dots.
We use functional nutrition, personalized support, and functional lab testing to figure out why your body is doing what it's doing, instead of just guessing or slapping a Band-Aid on symptoms.
And because you're a listener of The Wellness Effect, when you use the code Wellness Effect, you'll receive a free functional lab when you join the program. If this episode is resonating with you, make sure to share it with a friend, subscribe to the podcast, and check out the show notes to learn more about Lifestyle You and how to apply.
I think this is something that I really want to highlight is your thyroid isn't just like going along and deciding on its own out of nowhere what to do, how much hormone to make. It is getting instructions from your brain. And I know we've talked about this on episodes before, and I get really pissed off and heated about it because, okay, well, I'm just going to explain actually how it happens and then we'll talk about it. But there's this communication chain. I know we talk a lot about the different axes in the body. There's the gut brain axis, the gut skin axis, and there is one called the HPT axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid. And it's kind of just like another one of these chain reactions. So your hypothalamus is constantly monitoring your body. It's like a very sensitive thermostat within your brain. So it's picking up signals about what your metabolism is doing. And when it decides that something needs to shift, like speed up, slow down, it sends a chemical messenger down to your pituitary gland saying like, hey, speed up that metabolism, or hey, slow that down. And then the pituitary gland sends another messenger, TSH, which we all know about, thyroid stimulating hormone, that gets sent down to the thyroid. So I just really want to highlight that is not a thyroid hormone. It is a signaling hormone sent to the thyroid, and then the thyroid responds by producing more or less. So the thyroid is the last domino in that chain. It's not always a thyroid issue necessarily. It's not the thyroid gland itself that's busted or doing the wrong thing. It could be coming from upstream. And I just think that distinction matters so much for how you actually address it and even just understanding what is going on.
And are you going to talk about why, are you relating that back later in the episode about how that's an issue when doctors typically run standard labs for thyroid? That's the only one they're looking at, or we're going to move into that
we're going
now?
to talk about what all the different markers are and just kind of how to understand a few of them so that we can advocate for ourselves a little bit better, because I'm not sure if doctors, it's like embarrassing. Like, do you not understand that TSH is not a thyroid hormone? Like, I don't get it. Like, are we not
on the same page here?
Are we not like, yeah, like I don't know. Anywho. So
well,
yeah,
they covered
definitely.
thyroid for like 40 minutes in medical school. So
Yeah.
just kidding. Just kidding.
Just kidding. We love you guys. Okay, so this should kind of cover it. We're going to talk about how thyroid hormone is actually made and how our body uses it. Okay, so once we get the thyroid, or once we get that message, the TSH from the pituitary gland, our thyroid typically should produce two different hormones. One is called T3, one is called T4. And this is where a lot of people get confused again. So T4 is the one that your thyroid makes the most of. Like 90% of what it produces is T4. But T4 is kind of just sitting there waiting to be used. It's what we call storage form, meaning it's thyroid hormone that has not been activated yet. So your body kind of holds on to it like a reserve. It's not able to do the active work in your cells. It has to be converted into that T3, which is the active form. And when it's active, it can just go into your cells and do the job. So burn energy, regulate temperature, all of these things. So T4 is just like thyroid hormone kind of in waiting, and your body has to flip the switch, convert that in order to be able to do it properly. So I saw one analogy when I was kind of like researching for this episode, and it was like, think of T4 as a check that needs to be cashed. It has not been cashed yet. It has value. It's sitting there, but you can't really do anything until it gets converted into money. And T3 is like the money. Does that kind of make sense? Is that a good analogy?
Yes, That is a good
Yes.
analogy.
Okay.
And would you,
Thank you.
like, does T3, it's never produced, it's always just, it's a converted form of T4?
No, the thyroid produces both, but only 90% of it is the T4, which is inactive, and about 10% of it is that T3. And then we'll even get into something else called reverse T3, which we'll get into in a minute. But yes, so very little of what your thyroid is producing is that active form. Shout out to Brett for opening the garage door right now.
I don't hear it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So this is what I really like. I think a lot of people are like, how can lifestyle, how can working on all these things even help our thyroid? And this is the part that you really need to listen to, that conversion that we're talking about, right? The cashing of the check from T4 to T3, most of that, 60, even closer to 70% of that conversion happens in your, any guesses?
Liver.
Yay! Go down that. Lacey didn't unmute quick enough. But yes,
I
your
knew it.
liver.
I knew it.
So here's like the second time in this moment that we're talking about how the thyroid hasn't even like really done anything yet. And we could be thinking it's out of balance if we don't have enough T3. Well, maybe that's a liver problem and not a thyroid problem. If we don't have enough TSH, maybe that's a pituitary, a hypothalamus problem, not even a thyroid problem. So that's why, medicating right off the bat can just be like such a mistake, honestly. But I mean, you do you, I guess. I don't want to tell people this is not medical advice, as we state in the beginning of this podcast.
I'm sure you'll mention, we're not even, or me, I'm not necessarily against thyroid medication, but as we'll talk about as we move through it, there's so many things that we can kind of at least try to look at and assess before going down that road. And once again, something you'll probably talk about is that thyroid medication might not even make a difference in us feeling better if we don't have these other things, foundations, if you were set in stone.
Well, and like, if it's a pituitary problem, well, like your pituitary is not just responsible for your thyroid, it's responsible for so many other hormones and signals in the body. So it's like if you're having that issue and you're just covering it up by giving yourself more T4, what else downstream are you kind of band-aiding without even really realizing it? So I just think that it's really important to like focus on, again, all the foundations, of course. So yeah, if your liver is congested, sluggish, overburdened, and of course we talk about all that stuff all the time, but your ability to convert that T4 into T3 is just going to suffer so much, even if your thyroid gland is working completely fine. And then another piece of this puzzle, so we're at like 60 to 70% of that conversion. Another 20% happens in your gut. So healthy, robust, good gut bacteria produce an enzyme that activates thyroid hormone right in the digestive tract. So if your gut is inflamed, if you have dysbiosis, if that microbiome's out of balance, Candida, H. pylori, everything we kind of look for on the GI map, you're losing that large chunk of active thyroid hormone production just right there in the gut. So again, if we're not focusing on, supporting our gut health and all of those other downstream issues that dysbiosis and candida and all these things are going to cause, and we're just covering it up with a thyroid medication, it's just like kind of a missed opportunity, honestly. So yeah, we can really start to see how this isn't always just a thyroid gland problem. It's a liver problem, a gut problem, maybe even stress. It's just downstream of so many other systems. And then there's something I want to talk about called reverse T3. And this is the one gets a little confusing, is very easy to misunderstand. But here's kind of what happens. Your body converts that T4, right? It has a choice. It can convert it into active T3. That's what we've been talking about. Or it can convert it into reverse T3, which is kind of the mirror image of T3. Same thing, but it actually has a totally different impact and effect. So reverse T3 competes with free T3 for those receptor sites in the cells. And when reverse T3 kind of takes that spot, our active T3 can't get in there and can't do its job. So it's not just passive, it's not just floating around, it's actively blocking the good thyroid hormone that we want from getting into your cells. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. So is reverse T3 bad?
Well, I'm going to tell you
Okay.
exactly what it does, I think. um, okay, so yeah, this is where, and this is too like your cell receptors are like a parking lot, right? There's a limited number. So if active T3 is trying to find a spot and reverse T3 pulls in every single parking spot and is just sitting there, active T3 is now like circling around the body. It has nowhere to go. So your cells aren't getting the signal that there's active T3. So this is what produces functional hypothyroidism. So, despite having normal TSH and normal T4, this is very commonly missed because it's just like a mismatch in what's happening in the cell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, are you going to kind of get into what causes us to produce reverse T3 over? Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, basically, we'll have this TSH that looks fine, T4 looks fine, T3 that looks fine. But if reverse T3 isn't even checked, which it often isn't, you're still not knowing like really what's going on at the receptor level. So, your labs are still could say every single thing was fine when that's just not the reality. So your body starts to produce reverse T3 on purpose during times of high stress, illness, or severe calorie restriction. Ding, ding, ding,
Ding, ding,
ding.
ding.
Yeah.
And is that more like a protective mechanism because it doesn't have the fuel or whatever it needs to do the job, so it produces this other one instead?
Yeah, it's considered an adaptive response just to conserve energy. Basically, there's a perceived threat. Your body's like, holy shit, something is really wrong. We're slowing the metabolism down just to protect and conserve like all that energy. Which is great, like ancient survival, whatever, but, now in this modern time, people are just under this prolonged psychological stress, there's chronic inflammation, or, like, what we see so often is that persistent caloric restriction, and your body just doesn't know the difference between, like, a cougar chasing you or you not eating enough or not sleeping enough, and running on cortisol for all those years, it just responds the same exact way. So it shunts that T4 away from active T3 towards reverse. The brakes go on your metabolism, and you're honestly just going to feel like garbage. So
And is the reverse T3 the one that's really hard to get tested, especially if you're in Canada?
that one and probably TPO, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. Like most, I'm going to kind of go into like the markers that we should be
Right.
asking for. But I think like TPO is the antibodies. It can tell you if it's like an immune thing. I find that one so hard to get to. Like most people can get TSH and T4, but like now you can see like TSH can be fine, T4 can be fine, and then there's so many other opportunities for things to be off balance and you to feel like garbage and it's just like not even being looked at. So, so frustrating, but I think this is just like such a big piece of that under eating,
Yeah.
thing that we see it's so common. It's like actually crazy. So, like, your body isn't just like, "Oh, she's not eating enough. I'm just gonna, like, lose 5 pounds." It's like, "I'm going to stop everything from happening in her body," which, yeah, you might lose a little bit of weight at first, maybe, but, like, you're also probably gonna be exhausted. You need energy to sleep, so your sleep's gonna be shit. Your mood's gonna start to go downhill. You're probably gonna be freezing cold all the time. Your hair is gonna start falling out. Your skin's gonna look like garbage. Like, it just is
Like where you hold
not.
weight is going to shift, your ability, like your period will disappear. It's seriously everything. I think that's such a big thing is people think, oh, I'm just under eating. It's going to help me lose weight. But when we get into this territory, it's not just a matter of like losing weight versus not losing weight. It's your metabolic health. And that includes everything under
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
umbrella.
Yeah, it's always so cool to, like, tie it all together. It's just like, "Oh, shit.
Oh, I shouldn't be
Shite."
having coffee for breakfast every single
Yeah.
day and
Yeah,
having
like,
a salad for lunch.
we're not making it up, like, it's real, you guys, it's real. Okay, so, I wanna kinda get into the markers a little bit. I know I've touched a lot on a lot of them, but these are some that you can ask for. These are the ones I think that matter the most, and there's, like, 9 on a full thyroid panel or maybe even 11, but I'm gonna go through 5 today, and if you could get these, like, you would have such a better look at the full picture of what your thyroid is doing instead of just, like, TSH, which it's usually on a full physical. Like everyone can just get TSH, like, oh, I'm good. And not to even mention like the Western ranges of what these markers are so much wider and broader than what you would look at from a functional perspective to have like optimal health, not just like,
Not
I don't even
have a
know, like
disease. Well, they
not
test,
Mhm.
it's
have,
like, yeah, you're either normal or you have hypo or hyperthyroidism. Like,
yes.
There's no
so if you're on like
preventative.
the cusp of that, you're normal.
Yeah. Can they medicate you or do surgery on you? If not, then you're considered normal.
Mhm. Well, and I think with so much with thyroid too, which is so unfortunate, and maybe you guys have had different experience to get that full thyroid panel, and like Kira's saying, it impacts so many more things, not just our ability to lose and gain weight, but it's the only time you're getting that maybe like more, and even then sometimes not, that more in-depth lab is if you come in and you've gained an insane amount of weight and you can't figure out why, or you're dropping weight like crazy and losing all of your hair. There's no like in between in that aspect in when they're going to
Mhm.
actually give you a marker other than just TSH.
Yeah. So frustrating. We need someone in Canada to open up like a private phlebotomy lab because they'd be rich. So if anyone needs a business idea, please do that and then let us know.
Yeah.
Okay, so first, quick overview TSH. So that's that messenger hormone from the pituitary. Remember the chain reaction we just talked about. If TSH is high, your brain is essentially just shouting louder at your thyroid because it's not receiving enough of that thyroid feedback loop kind of back. So high TSH is pointing towards maybe an underactive thyroid. If it's low, your brain isn't asking as hard, which points towards an overactive thyroid, or if you're maybe on thyroid medication and you're getting that. So, does that kind of make sense? Like it's basically your brain yelling at your thyroid, like, I need more, or like, okay, we're
Yeah.
good. So then we have T4. That's the storage hormone, the inactive reserve we were talking about. On a good panel, you want to see something called free T4. So that's the unbound amount that's available to be converted. Then there's T3, that's that big one, the active usable hormone. This is what actually correlates with how your cells are functioning day to day. And of course, annoyingly, this is the one that gets skipped so often on standard panels. Like we said a million times now, you can have normal TSH, low T3, and your doctor would send you home saying everything is totally fine. Then there's that reverse T3, the brake pedal. So, high stress, under eating, illness, pushing your body to make more of this instead of the active, usable T3. You want this low and in a good ratio to the free T3. And then there's one that we haven't really talked about yet. These are called TPO antibodies, and this is the immune marker. So, this is going to tell us whether your immune system is also attacking your thyroid tissue. If this is elevated, this could be something like Hashimoto's, and this completely changes how things get approached. So, it's so often, or it's so important to have this tested, and it's skipped so often because you can have, again, this can be sky high, but totally normal TSH, and your doctors are just never even considering looking. Yeah, and like again, if that number looks normal, they can basically just call it a day. Like you're good. Even if you have every symptom in the book, normal TSH kind of just like tells them, oh, everything's good here. Which again, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, it's like, isn't that kind of embarrassing that like that's not even a thyroid marker? Like I just don't get it. So those are kind of the main ones. Of course, there's like a lot more that go into an even bigger panel, but I'm not even going to get into them today because doctors won't really give them to you. But if you have a great nurse practitioner or a doctor who will do these things for you, you can maybe we'll put in the show notes like what would be a full panel because you could do like T4, free T3, T3, reverse T3. There's a couple different antibodies, so we'll make sure to kind of list that in there for you guys. Does that all make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about symptoms because this is what I think makes us have that like aha moment in ourselves. So we hear a lot like hypothyroid versus hyperthyroid. So first one is hypo. This is underactive thyroid. This is so common. Like we see this I don't know, what do you guys think? How often are people coming to us and are actually diagnosed hypo? Like quite a bit, hey?
A lot, yeah.
30-40% probably.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people, and maybe you can correct me if this isn't true, but they'll switch. So a lot of the times, whether it's diagnosed or not, they'll start with the hyper, and at one point, we're going to see our body stop being able to produce enough thyroid hormone, and then it turns into hypo,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, exactly. And I'll definitely get into that. And so hypo, that's the first one. This is things like fatigue that doesn't really go away, weight gain that just doesn't make sense or feels impossible no matter what you do, that temperature kind of dysregulation. So if you struggle to keep your body warm, dry skin, hair loss, constipation, brain fog, depression, puffiness, and just like a general slow feeling. So I literally feel like this is everyone, honestly, that we end up working with. Now that I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, this is our main audience.
Well, well, no, it's just funny because I said like 40%, but what did you say at the beginning? Like 60% of the people who
Mhm.
have it aren't even diagnosed, right? So it's
Yeah.
like 40% come to us diagnosed, and then there's probably like a 20 to 30% of the people that we're working with that aren't diagnosed but have thyroid issues. So yeah, it's definitely applicable.
And two, like just on that note, it can totally change. Like getting a diagnosis of hyper and hypo, we've worked with tons of people that have reversed that. So I honestly like, for me personally, I just would rather not know and like focus on, the foundations and all of the other things and watch those symptoms. I'm like 90% sure I was hypo at one point and I just was like couldn't get the testing, so I never got to say like, "Oh, I am hypothyroid," but I was.
Well, and it's kind of like what you said at the beginning when there's such a downstream impact of the thyroid
Mhm.
that people get this diagnosis, they hear it, they claim onto it, like, oh, now I am this thing. And then they get these thyroid medications and they just take them for the rest of their life, not understanding that if they maybe worked on their liver health or their gut health, then their thyroid would have started working properly again. And they've just kind of like succumbed to this diagnosis. And so I
Yeah.
agree. I think sometimes it's better if you don't get that label, if you have enough understanding of what you can do
Mhm.
without it.
And the balls to do it.
And the
Yeah.
balls to do it.
Yeah, so that's hypo. Then there's hyper. So this is that overactive thyroid. It's basically the opposite. We see a lot of this is very like way less common. I would say I've had like maybe 4 clients that have actually been true hyperthyroid, but we're going to see, like everything's fast. Your heart is racing, you feel hot all the time, your anxiety is like physical in your body. You're restless trying to sleep. You have maybe unintentional weight loss, maybe like tremors, shakiness, and then even diarrhea. And so, like to what Jensen was saying earlier, that early stage Hashimoto's, which is the immune thyroid reaction, it can look hyper for a little while before it actually falls into hypothyroid, which is what it's considered. So the immune system is attacking the thyroid tissue and it's getting a dump of these stored hormones into the bloodstream, and then that tissue gets worn down and the production just starts to decline. So again, and this is kind of to that, is it even worth getting the diagnosis, because the picture can really shift over time just depending at where you're at in that process. And there's even like another layer to this where specifically postpartum, this is very, very common to have like a pretty heavy dump of the thyroid hormone, get kind of diagnosed hyper, and then it totally shifts like literally within 48 hours to being hypothyroid, and then you're kind of medicating the wrong way and it's just like a big disaster.
Yeah, I feel like that's very similar to like how cortisol
Yeah.
would work, right? Like
Mhm.
we have high cortisol and we think that's so bad, but eventually your cortisol bottoms out and then you have no cortisol and that's actually worse, but your adrenals and stuff will work to keep up. So yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so what is actually driving thyroid dysfunction? And I know we've talked a little bit about this already, but I really want to like take a moment and just take in this section because of course like, it's easy to say, "Oh, I have this or I have this symptom or whatever," but I think you're here and you're listening to this podcast because you want to understand why and you want to go deeper. And again, it's just going to have this massive ripple effect on so many areas of your life. It's not just going to be your thyroid, it's going to be your relationships. And I think it's so connected to how we're able to use our voice and if we can ask for things and speak our truth. And then just the way you show up in the world and all the ripple effects of supporting your thyroid and kind of going through all these different things that contribute to thyroid dysfunction are just going to shift so many things in your life. So I'm excited. If you've made it this far, congrats. You're so cool. Okay, so one of the first contributors, chronic stress and the HPA axis. So when you are in a chronic stress state, cortisol stays elevated, and elevated cortisol, remember there's that HPA axis. So that's the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And then there's the HPT axis. So hypothalamus pituitary thyroid. So the first two steps of those axes are the same. So if you're, kind of hammering your HPA axis with stress, your HPT, your thyroid axis is going to be like, hello, like, can I get a moment over here? So that's actually going to suppress the pituitary messenger, that TSH. So then we're interfering with the conversion of T4 into T3. We're driving up reverse T3. So if you are chronically stressed, you can develop something that looks exactly like a thyroid problem. Like you could be listening to this episode and like, yes, I have a thyroid issue. Ding, ding, ding. That is me. But like, do you, or do you just have chronic stress that is pushing down the function of your thyroid? Because those are two totally different things. And again, like coming back to that label that we talked about, it would really suck to get labeled, hyper or hypothyroid when really you need to like touch grass and eat enough food, basically. Okay, and this is also when like treating the thyroid directly is literally going to do nothing because the thyroid's not the issue in that scenario. So that's number 1. Number 2, we've already talked about is gut health. So again, 20% of that conversion is happening in your gut. So we want to see what's actually going on in there. This is why we love the GI map. It's such a valuable test, especially for this. And I think it's really underrated for thyroid health, honestly. And, when we see that dysbiosis, pathogenic bacteria, parasites, inflammation, that is putting stress on your thyroid and it is undermining that, the activation that's supposed to be happening in your gut. And on top of that, leaky gut and dysbiosis can be a direct pathway into thyroid autoimmunity in the first place, which is just a whole nother level of how gut health and the thyroid are connected. So in my opinion, this is one of the first places to go. And then, of course, there's liver congestion, which is something we focus on basically with all of our clients from the day they sign up in the program. They are supporting their liver, they're supporting their detox pathways. Again, 60% of the conversion happens here. So if your liver is sluggish and overburdened, which I hate to tell you, it is, you are just going to limit how much of that active thyroid you have available. And even if your gland is producing enough of all of the things, you don't have that conversion happening. The next piece is blood sugar dysregulation. So chronic blood sugar instability, again, we're talking that HPA, HPT axis, that's keeping your adrenals just constantly producing cortisol. So that's another kind of ongoing stress response that I just felt like was worth its own little moment in time because that on top of it is adding to the disruption of the pituitary function. So when blood sugar spikes, insulin surges that kind of follow are going to basically directly accelerate thyroid autoimmunity. So another reason that blood sugar, again, is something so foundational that we literally focus on with every single one of our clients from the second they start talking to us. It's like you're focusing on your liver and you're focusing on your blood sugar. And our favorite one we're going to talk about is minerals. This one's massive, so we're going to spend a minute here because I honestly don't see this talked about ever anywhere. I don't know if you guys do, obviously in our little bubble, but like I don't know, do you guys see a ton of like posts. I mean, I'm just talking about Instagram, but I think it's just underserved for people who are trying to figure out thyroid. It's like, do you know what's going on with your minerals? Because they're just so important.
Well, and I think if it is
No.
talked about, it's only ever talked about selenium. Like it's not talked about everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Selenium's gotten a little bit of like buzz for sure,
That's
but I don't
true.
see a lot of deficient selenium in the labs we do. I
Yeah.
do see some other things, which I'm
Some
sure
other
Kira will
stuff.
talk about.
Yeah, it's like have some Brazil nuts and you're good to go.
Yeah, it's like
That's all we get. Okay, so yeah, this is so cool because your thyroid, all the things that we've already talked about that your thyroid does, it literally cannot produce those hormones without the right minerals in place. So these are not like, oh, this is cool. This is a nice add on. These are required materials. Required materials. So, first one we're going to talk about is iodine, Lacey's favorite mineral in the whole entire world. And it is the building block of thyroid hormone. So T4 has 4 iodine molecules, T4, and T3 has 3, T3. So cool. So without actually having enough iodine, your thyroid can't even build these hormones in the first place. Of course, iodine is one of the most nuanced minerals, I think. This is one that you need to be working with a practitioner on. Like too much iodine, especially if there's any autoimmunity going on, is going to make things way worse. I'm not saying just take an iodine supplementation. That's not it at all. There are like food ways you can support iodine and kind of see how that works. But if you do have true deep thyroid dysfunction, you should be working on a practitioner with an iodine protocol. Okay, selenium is one that we hear a lot about. It's very, very important for thyroid function. It's required for the enzyme that converts T4 into T3. So cool. So without selenium, again, now we're talking liver, gut, and minerals, that conversion cannot happen. It also helps to lower thyroid antibodies. There's a lot of solid research on this. So the Brazil nut thing is actually a really good recommendation. It's just, we can do more. We can have more than that.
It's funny because we said like, oh, it's getting some hype and people know about that. And I was just reading about that. And it's like 20% of people get enough. So it's like, I feel like it's hyped up in our circle, but most people don't get enough. So you should eat 2 Brazil nuts every single day. And then you get your amount that you need.
Yeah. Yeah.
But don't overdo it because
And you can't because they're not good.
I actually think they are, but I've had a couple people that like eat a ton and it comes back as high on their HTMA.
Oh yeah, no, and they're also super, super calorie dense. So I wouldn't be eating a ton of Brazil nuts, but
no, but 2 a day, keep it to that.
Keeps the doctor away. Okay, so then there's zinc. Zinc is involved in the actual production of TSH and then how thyroid, I've said thyroid too many times today, how thyroid hormone binds to your cells. So low zinc means the signal from your brain to your thyroid is just going to get weaker. And the hormone that does get produced has a harder time doing its job on the cellular level. Then there's iron, or specifically even ferritin. So this is needed for the production of thyroid hormone again. Low iron, which is something we see a ton of iron dysregulation. This is basically like, honestly, all of us, I feel, in some way, shape, or form. So low iron is going to impair that TPO antibody, which is the immune sort of piece of the puzzle. And this is the enzyme your thyroid uses to build the hormone. And iron deficiency and iodine deficiency really often show up together and then compound each other, which is, I don't know, it's just so cool and like fascinating and frustrating and incredible. I feel like I love it. And then magnesium, which we talk a ton about. This is just great for the overall stress response, which we have linked to thyroid now several times today in this episode. It's going to regulate cortisol, support the conversion process. We know magnesium is needed for so many enzymatic things in the body, and a conversion process like T4 to T3 is a great example of what an enzymatic reaction is, because I think we're all like, wow, magnesium does 500 different jobs in the body. But then it's like, what does that mean? So to think about it as like, well, converting T4 to T3, for example. So a magnesium depleted body is a stressed body, period. And like I mentioned, when we have that stress, that HPA axis dysfunction, thyroid hormone just isn't going to be converted or produced efficiently.
Yeah.
And this is honestly why we love the HTMA. And this is just like the tip of the iceberg. You could literally link the thyroid to basically every single marker on the HTMA. There is a one specific ratio that is, we literally call the thyroid ratio, and we can kind of tell if you're swinging more hyper or hypo, even if you have totally normal labs. This is like looking at a cellular level, and your body can't actually move that thyroid hormone into the cell if you don't have enough sodium and potassium. So we could literally go on and on about this all day, but I just really recommend looking into an HTMA, whether you do that with us or whoever, because it shows us that cellular level minerals, not just the blood. And when someone has thyroid symptoms, the HTMA is just going to tell us this full mineral depletion picture. That's such a big piece of the puzzle. And this is what, like, to me, is root cause work. It's not just like replacing the hormone. It's like, why is this happening? Why can't the body do this? Where are we lacking? What is causing us to be lacking? So, any additions on the minerals?
I would just say
No.
Oh, you can go, Lace, first.
It's funny because I was like, no, nothing to add. Here, I have something to add. But honestly, just want to highlight us and how we do our program, because there's a reason why we start with minerals even before usually a GI map that we'll do with our clients, because we don't typically do a GI map until clients are like month 4 to 6 with us. But it's like, we want to start with minerals because your thyroid might not be working properly just because it doesn't have the raw materials that it needs. So we replenish the minerals, and it's like, awesome. 60-70% of people, they're great. But there's other percentage of people that maybe it is more of a gut issue. And then we go into that after. So just more so wanted to highlight that.
Yeah.
We're awesome.
Toot our own horn.
And then just highlighting the potassium part of it too, because once again, Kira said we could talk about this forever, but potassium is what is going to like sensitize the cell to thyroid hormone. So once again, we see normal TSH, but is that hormone actually able to enter the cell? And we talk about like the key and lock analogy a lot, and potassium is one of those keys that will unlock the door so that the TSH can actually enter the cell. And then when we see something like what Kira was saying with that thyroid ratio, if your calcium's really elevated, which we see that often as well, because that's driven from stress and dietary, etc., then that's blocking that thyroid hormone from being able to enter as well. And that's such a common pattern we see, is that elevated calcium, especially relative to very low bottomed out potassium. So it's just so interesting, all of these different components that are outside of just traditional blood work that Kira's talking about.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Hopefully something happened again. Okay, 2 more things, and then I'll tell you what to do about it all. So there's also a whole category of chemicals that actually interfere with thyroid function. So these are like environmental toxins. And I think we really covered this great in that toxic episode that Lacey kind of hosted for us. And again, like, it's not just, the hormones that we think about, like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. Some of these environmental toxins bind directly to thyroid receptors. Some of them compete with iodine, some interfere with other hormones. So, fluoride and chlorine in tap water are going to directly compete with iodine for the same sites in your thyroid. Plastics, certain flame retardant chemicals, pesticides, these are all part of the thyroid picture that nobody really connects back to that daily exposure. So, I'm not going to get into a ton of like who, what, when, where, why of environmental toxins, but just knowing that, yes, they're, adding to the picture of the burden on your liver, but they are also directly impacting thyroid function, just like in that episode we talked about their impact on all hormones. And then there is the autoimmunity. So this is specific to Hashimoto's. The most common underlying cause of hypothyroidism is Hashimoto's. And what happens is the immune system attacks thyroid tissue. So, going after those TPO antibodies. And one of the biggest known triggers, I hate to say it, but it's gluten. but I find this really a fascinating piece of information. But the structure of the gluten protein is similar enough to thyroid tissue that the immune system can actually get confused and kind of attack the wrong target. It's actually called molecular mimicry. And when we're talking root cause, we're never like treating thyroid autoimmunity by just looking at the thyroid again. You have to look at what's driving that immune response itself. So this is something we kind of see on the GI map is that anti-gliadin immune piece of the puzzle. And if it's really high, it can really be correlated to like a autoimmune Hashimoto's kind of thyroid picture.
Do you think you could have it not be high and still have that component? Is there any other like pathways, or would it just be a gluten allergy potentially without that anti-gliadin that could be high? Do you see what I'm trying to ask?
So no.
Like,
Is there any way you can eat gluten?
No, that's not actually what I'm saying. I'm actually saying the opposite, because some people have autoimmune and that anti-gliadin comes back low. And that's where I'm like, well, I know cutting out gluten is going to be good for you, but I don't have this marker now to motivate you to do it. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, like anytime there's immune struggles, like gluten is just a piece of the puzzle, whether you get that lab marker or not. And we sometimes just call it a non-clue, where it's like, okay, we don't have to use this information if we don't want to, but like, we have to look at the person always and not just like the results on paper. Everyone's so different. And if like inflammation and sluggish thyroid is like on their list, then whether it's part of their healing protocol and they're just cutting out gluten for 6 months, 9 months, or if it's like a lifetime thing, that's always going to be kind of different. But gluten just is tough.
Yeah. No, I was just going to share my own personal experience because in my first GI map, I had high anti-gliadin and I cut out gluten and I have an autoimmune disease, psoriasis, and then healed, did a bunch of protocols, retested, and then my anti-gliadin is now very low. But I mean, I've actually never had my antibodies tested, so it would be like interesting, but I almost just wonder if it's the difference between, but you just said you have people who are still struggling that still have low anti-gliadin. So it's not really like, maybe it's more of like are you kind of managing and being on top of your autoimmune and your symptoms aren't really there anymore. It's not like cured technically, but
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? But you're kind of saying the opposite. You see people come into the program, they're struggling and they have no reaction to gluten on their initial test.
And part of that,
Well, and they might just have more of their immune system's just bottomed out at that point,
that's
and
what I
it
was
can't
going to
give them a
say.
reaction.
Yeah. Like if a lot of the times when they have that really bottomed out anti-gliadin, they're also going to have no immune response at all. And so then because it's bottomed out, as we've learned with your thyroid, cortisol, immune response, they're going to be heightened until they can no longer be heightened anymore. And so I think to answer my own question also, that's probably more of what it is. If someone has none of that immune response to gliadin, that protein in gluten, then that's why it's probably not there, is because they don't have the immune response.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's interesting because my mom was just here and I don't think she's ever had her antibodies tested, but she has thyroid, or she does. So yeah, she has hashies. And we were just talking because she's going to Italy. Not sure if she's told you that yet, Kier, but she's going to Italy in like November. And we were just kind of talking about, she's like, I think I can eat gluten there because, everyone talks about that they feel way better when they eat gluten there. But what I'm hearing is it's not just like the glyphosate that impacts people with autoimmune. It is that like replica, your body gets confused. But even in, I think another layer on just like the gluten conversation is the quality of gluten in US and Canada is garbage for the most of us. So it's like that on top of it replicating so similar. It's just, usually if you have autoimmune, you're not going to regret cutting it out. Well, you may regret it, but symptom-wise, you won't.
It's just, and we've talked about this before, Lacey, it's like, even when you're cutting out gluten, because it's in so many hyper processed foods, you're just naturally eating even 10% healthier and better options, because instead of getting the normal bun when you're like on a road trip, you're getting the lettuce bun because that's the only option there is. And so I think it's like, once again, so many different things, just overall inflammation, the gluten, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so if you are listening to this and like, okay, are you guys going to tell me what the fuck to do? Or are you just going to tell me how bad thyroid stuff is? We're going to tell you, don't worry. So I'm going to kind of quickly run through this because I know we're getting to the hour mark on this episode. So, first thing would be, of course, just to try to advocate for yourself. Try to get those labs, TSH, T4 and T3, reverse T3, and TPO antibodies at the very least. If your doctor will only run TSH, consider finding a functional practitioner or a naturopath or a nurse practitioner who can actually look at more. This is like, if you really have thyroid stuff going on, this is what you need. But if you're kind of like me and you just want to like do things another way, you could look into an HTMA. This is our favorite for the thyroid conversion. It shows mineral status inside the cells, not just your blood. What are you depleted in? Are they in the right ratios? If you're trying to build thyroid hormone from depleted raw materials, just no amount of medication is going to give you that result if you literally just don't have what your body needs. So the HTMA is a great place to start. And then, of course, the GI map. If you have any gut symptoms on top of what you think are thyroid symptoms, bloating, constipation, IBS, skin issues, it's just such a valuable test. It's going to show us exactly what's going on and, give us 20% of that conversion that we kind of talked about and whether there's a gut-driven autoimmune trigger that we need to address. And then I would say probably the biggest one is to support your liver. So reducing your toxic load. We do this through like swapping out our products, having cleaner air and water, all of those things, and then supporting your detox pathways, which we should probably do like just a detox pathway episode, honestly, drainage pathway. Yeah, so really supporting your liver. This is great with like herbs like dandelion, things like castor oil packs and dry brushing and just movement and staying hydrated. Like that can actually really go a long way. Yeah, I feel like we've talked about this a lot, but that's going to support conversion so much. And then stabilizing your blood sugar, which you guys know a lot about at this point. But protein at every meal, stop that freaking roller coaster. This is going to protect the HPA axis, reduce the chronic cortisol, and just that disruption that happens upstream of that. And focusing on regulating your nervous system. So I think chronic stress is one of the most underrated thyroid disruptors that there is. This is not like a secondary thing or like oh, maybe I need to work on my stress. No, if you have thyroid issues, you need to be focused on stress management, like end of story. And then, of course, if autoimmunity is suspected, maybe look at gluten. So, and just given how strong that Hashimoto's correlation is, this is actually like a dietary thing that's worth really investigating. I think, like food cutting out everything gets a lot of like talk and heat, and there's not many foods that we like really think you need to cut long term. I'm always like laughing at I know this is like kind of mean maybe, but everyone's like, if your kid has eczema and you're breastfeeding, it's like cut out dairy, cut out eggs, cut out sugar. And I'm like, me eating my like sugar dairy latte with my toast because I just healed my gut instead of cutting everything out and my kid's eczema went away.
Okay, I have kind of a random question.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think just in my head, I always thought that Hashimoto's or the autoimmune was just kind of like if it just kept naturally progressing and you didn't do anything about it. But it's not
Mm-hmm.
really that, right? It's not just like it got so bad that then it turned into an autoimmune. It's like it's
It
kind of a separate
can.
thing. Oh, okay.
It
Okay.
can, but it can also be like caused by autoimmune. So it can kind of be
Right.
both ways. Yeah.
Right.
Good question.
Yeah, because I remember when I first got my first GI map and a bunch of other testing done, they're like, you're teetering Hashimoto's, like, get your shit together. And I was like, okay, so you can just like get Hashimoto's? Like, doesn't it kind of happen? Isn't it like cart before the horse? But it can be either way.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that was kind of it. And honestly, I think if you know that you have some sort of thyroid dysfunction, this is somewhere where I would be just working with someone because it's such a nuanced topic and it's just so nice to have someone in your corner that's like doing the research and the work for you, and you get to just focus on managing your stress and eating well and, doing all the things that I just kind of listed, and someone just like tells you what you have to do, and it's great. So
And it's just
just what I kind of
nuanced.
yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
And just doctors really don't have much knowledge around it, I would say, as well. So it's just something that you do probably have to invest in, but it will be worth it. And
Mhm.
I don't think you'll regret it. And even I was going to mention this too, when you were going through like what numbers to get your doctor to test, you will really, really, really have to advocate for them to get those numbers. Like that's not something that you
Yeah.
can just waltz in there and say, like it will. So like go prepared and even have like, I remember I used to follow this one girl and she had all of these like crazy chronic symptoms, but she used to go into the doctor with like a binder of all of these things and like overly prepared. And you don't have, they're not going to read the binder. But if you go in there and you're like, hey, I need this, this, and this, and here is all the reasons why I need this, like they are more likely to do it, but it's not going to be a walk in the park at all. And even like I was talking to my mom last night, who's had Hashimoto's for years, and she still hasn't been able to get her, I think T4 is the one that they don't test? Or what's the ones they always do? T3 and TSH?
TSH and T4 are like
Okay, so she
easy,
still
which is
hasn't been able to get her T3 and she's very knowledgeable and like understands, you know what I mean? So it's like
mhm.
it's not easy to get those tested, but kind of
Well, and
like
I
what
think
Kira said, or you go ahead, Jeb.
I was just gonna say, I think it's one of those things where doctors like, yeah, they can test it, but they won't because they're busy and overburdened and blah blah blah. Especially on for people like us, they're like, well, what are we gonna do with that number anyways? Like, you're gonna just like you don't want medication, you know what I mean? And so that's why, to like what Kira has said, like if you getting all these numbers are really difficult for you, the best place to start is just by working on these foundations because those are going to be what improves the numbers. And if you don't want to go down the medication route, then it's probably not even worth it. You know what I mean? Like, and just do the foundations because that's what's going to help. It's not some, and then the HTMA and the GI map, it's not some like number on your blood work. And now all of a sudden, you have to have 3 Brazil nuts instead of 2. It is truly everything we just talked about that is going to change those numbers and give you the solutions that you want. So it's frustrating, but it's
Yeah, I
for the
was just going to
best.
say, honestly, that's like all hormone issues. That's why
Yes.
we don't really talk much about testing hormones because, yes, it's validating and you can say, see, everyone, I do have a thyroid issue. But that's it. Like, that's all you get from that. And then it's like, okay, what do? We replenish your minerals, we fix the gut, we focus and prioritize the foundations, and then that solves it. So, testing your hormones, your thyroid is not going to fix your hormones or your thyroid. It's just
Yeah.
validation. Yeah.
Which has its place.
Mhm.
So if
Yeah.
you have, like, the bandwidth and the finances to do it, like, hell yeah, like, it can just be the best feeling ever, I think, especially for women, but it's also kinda like, where do you want your resources to go?
And I
Yeah,
think too, even
exactly.
with people really struggling to maybe commit to the foundations or just struggling to kind of like change that lifestyle, seeing it on paper again is more like a permission slip or a just motivating thing for women. It's like they know for sure, concrete, this is what's wrong. So now I'm going to actually listen. Where if we do have any of that just questionable or they're not 100% sure, it's like, well, it could be this, then it's like easier to kick the can down the road because you're not fully bought into the process and the journey, right? So, yeah, for sure, still can be valuable. But if you don't
Well, and it's
struggle with
even
committing and you're a busy, busy gal, then probably not worth your
yeah.
time.
And it's the same with the functional labs. Like they can like someone could come into the program and we could say like you need to eat this and do this and guess a little bit and like do have more potassium and have XYZ and make sure we're really diligent with like being completely gluten free. But if you don't have that, like, oh, I actually am deficient in potassium, and oh, I actually am deficient in selenium and zinc, and et cetera, then it's really hard to motivate yourself to just do those things because it still feels like another thing that you're just guessing and hoping that it works. Whereas as soon as you get that HTMA back and you have bottomed out potassium, now you actually have that motivation that it's like, okay, this is truly what I need to be doing. Now I'm going to do the things. And sometimes with HTMA, but especially with GI-MAP2, you are going to uncover things that we wouldn't be able to completely focus on unless we had those exact answers there. Whereas blood work, it's truly just validation and a process for moving forward if you do want to go down the medication route, which sometimes is the best option for certain people if they are doing the foundations truly. But
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I kind of just want everyone to know your thyroid is not this like isolated thing doing its own thing in a vacuum, just like everything in our body. It's a piece of a much bigger conversation, of your brain, your liver, your gut, everything. And depending on having the right minerals, it can get disrupted by chronic stress. So if you've been told your thyroid's fine and you still don't feel fine, that doesn't mean that you're like making it up or whatever. It's just that the full picture hasn't really been looked at. And that's everything we kind of talked about today. So thank you so much for being here. If this episode helped you understand your own thyroid or your labs a little bit better, please send it to somebody who you think could benefit it. Don't forget to share this podcast, like it, subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment, leave a review, send us a message. That's it. Any of those things would just be greatly appreciated. It helps us so much, you guys. And we just love you all to the moon and back.
to the
Have a great day.
moon and back. Bye. Thanks, Kira.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to The Wellness Effect. We're so grateful to be part of your wellness journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us on Instagram. We'll put all of our handles in the show notes. If you have questions or ideas, slide into our DMs or send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep creating your own wellness effect.